What is up, my ninjas? I am Strident, and welcome to the most fun and unfun of 2019. Before we get into it, I just want to say a few words about 2019 because, as you know, it is 2020. So happy New Year! And 2019 was full of ups and downs. Lots of things happened. Lots of releases actually when it comes to figures. But lots of good, lots of bad. Thankfully, I didn't get that much bad when it comes to my collection. And of course, we're going to go over the good and the bad in order to appreciate the good, though. And there's a lot of it. We have to first wade through the shit, as it were. So we're going to start with the unfun of 2019. So here we go. Ooh, number 5. 80th anniversary Alex Ross style Captain America. At this point, 2019, why are we still getting this with these weird, goat-eyed figures, And don't tell me, oh, they did a better job with the paint. No, garbage. Moving on. Number 4. So, you're looking at this and you're like, man, she looks cool. This is, of course, MJ from the Homecoming 2-pack, which came out the year before. I got it last year, and mine came with jizz in her hair. What the fuck? I tried to wash it out. It wouldn't come out. It's like the mold in the mold, if that makes sense. And Hasbro wouldn't help. So, yeah, you go on the list. 3. HASBRO OVERWATCH Ultimates Reaper, aka Gabriel Reyes, because this is before the transformation. So this figure suffers from things that I think are what kind of killed the line. The guns are too heavy. They could have made them out of lighter plastic. It's kind of a problem Hasbro has in general. Weird articulation when it comes to the feet. He's just not engineered well, all that you see going on in the torso, and you can't really use it, so he wasn't fun to play with. Mattel Multiverse KG Beast, or what he should be called is Hot Garbage. This figure is clearly a reuse of the Masters of the Universe Classics parts that were used for the Lobo Build-A-Figure. I know that sometimes you have to cut corners to make things work, but this is not how you do it. This is terrible. I couldn't even play with this thing. And since he's not an important character, it didn't bother me that much. That's why he's not higher on the list, but I don't get it. And the sculpting that is here is pretty well done. The mask, the chest, the belt, the weapon arm, the knives themselves, it's really well done, but, whatever. Was terrible. The Hasbro X-Men, I guess the cartoon wave, Storm, or the Classics wave, whatever you want to call it. This shit pissed me off because you know how much I hate hype. This figure here is a clear example of hype selling the figure. I mean, look at her wrists. There's literally elastic bands that have been sewn to the paper paper thin cape, so that it can attach to her wrists. That's not what they look like in the comics or the cartoon. So what the fuck? And then this figure goes for stupid prices, and I've seen people put this on their top lists and whatever, as if we've never gotten a better version of her before. And you know me, because I've been collecting for a while. This kind of shit pisses me off. No, you can't put this on a top list. Then there's like no differentiation between boots and the rest of her costume. And it's not like we didn't get this years before. You know what I mean? Look at all that sculpt work. Look at the actual band around her arm or her hand. Look at the wrinkles in the cloak. It's a plastic cloak or cape. Look at her boots. You actually can tell that she's got boots and she's got tights on. And when you put them side by side, it's like night and day. You know what I mean? I don't understand how this, I mean, and some could say maybe it's because it's a cartoon. They want the cartoon version, but it's not quite a cartoon thing. And don't get me started about the fucking shoulder pads where the lip barely fits into the hole on her shoulder to hold the shoulder pads in place. And then that plastic that's connected to the paper thin cape. It's stupid. And then and how they sculpted her hair out of the same material that they sculpted the body, so her head is so heavy that it's almost impossible to stand her up for any long amount of time. Any slight nudge fucks up everything. It's dumb. I mean, before the problem was she had high heels on. Now they fixed that, but they fucked up everything else. It's like engineering is non-existent to these guys. No, she's a complete pass, in my opinion. The only reason to get this figure is if you never got the previous one, or you can't get it. It's too expensive. And that she does look really cool with all the other Hasbro X-Men figures. You see I have a mixture in mind, but still she does look cool overall, so that's the saving grace. Not much else though. So yeah, that's Storm. And now finally the most fun of 2019. I've got 15. Number 15. Bumblebee movie Optimus Prime. Now, the only reason why this figure starts off at 15 is because of the transformation. Homeboy doesn't really stick together as well as I would like, but look at him. He's just such a fun, such an accurate looking figure. It's just, it's nuts. It's one of the best primes we've gotten. I just wish his parts would lock together better. Number 14. Worthy Captain America. He had to be on the list. It would make no sense if he wasn't on the list. Sculpt, paint, articulation, accessories, he's got it all. That's why he's here. Number 13. Hasbro Power Rangers Lightning Collection Pink Ranger. I've had a bunch of different Pink Rangers, but I never had the standard Mighty Morphin Zyuranger design. My favorites have been the original 90s ones from their Bandai's collection, and this one. And this one does everything that I could have imagined. I mean, she's got her weapons, she's got the effects parts, and then she's superposable. The alternate head is kind of, you know, but overall, this is a dope ass Pink Ranger. Number 12. Mattel Multiverse Tim Drake Robin, Red Robin actually. This is a really good figure. He's not perfect, but he represents a lot of things that we've been asking for from Mattel, and he came a little bit too late in the game. You know, this was one of their last figures in the last wave that they did for the Multiverse line, which kind of sucks, but I am glad to have him in my collection. I think you guys would be happy with him too. Number 11. The 3-pack. Gene, Psych, and Logan. This was really great, but we know we were all here for Gene. The others are, you know, some icing on the cake, but Gene, you're a superstar. We're here for Gene. And they did her justice. I mean, we got some choice, some options, and they improved vastly on the piece of garbage that they gave us previously. So props to them. Coming to the top 10. Number 10. Now this here warms my, my inner 11-year-old heart. These are the NECA TMNT cartoon figures. Most of these were released between last year, middle of last year I want to say, and just recently with Bebop and Rocksteady and the Foot Soldiers just releasing like a month or so ago, and they're awesome. I mean, it's literally super cartoon accurate versions of figures that we were offered when we were kids, but the versions we got when we were children didn't look like what we saw on screen. Not completely. Bebop was really close, Rocksteady was not. The Foot Soldiers were, you know, an essence of what we saw on screen, but they weren't as super accurate. I mean, even these Bebop and Rocksteadies have so much more articulation. Their mouths actually open. They can stand up straight. They're not in those weird pre-packaged poses like the foot soldiers were back in the day. And these guys are posable. They come with guns like what we've seen in the show. Shredder can stand up straight. I mean, it's just amazing. So now I can do all the things I wanted to do with those figures back in the day that I couldn't. You know, that 11, 12-year-old me or 10, 11-year-old me couldn't do. And I was huge into Ninja Turtles as a kid, and I still am. Not to mention, this Leo is pretty dope considering he looks like Leo in the first couple episodes of the original Ninja Turtles series. So it's nice to have him. I'm gonna have to go back though and get the all green, the same green colored versions that were just released, so I can have all 4 of them in this style. But you know, you could do much worse. These are amazing. The SH Figuarts Ultraman Zero and Ultraman Belial. Now you saw my review, it was pretty extensive. This is my, Ultraman is one of my happy places. So these guys represent like a return to form for Ultraman. Even though it did start going off the rails in later years, the original couple movies, you know, Ultra Galaxy Legend and all that were awesome. And having, you know, accurate representations of these two is a big deal for me, so they had to be on the list. Number 8, Power Rangers Lightning Series, Lightning Collection, Red Ranger from Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Jason. I've had a bunch of different Red Rangers from this era, but I want to say I have Rocky from the film, the first movie. I have the newer movie version of Jason, but I've never had a really good Zoo Ranger / you know, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers version of the Red Ranger, and this one does everything I wanted to do, just like Kimberly. The bigger deal for me is that I was always more of a Jason fan, and he typically gets the short end of the stick like the Bandai's version was. So I'm super geeked at having this figure. Number 7, Magna Defender. So this makes 2 Lightning series or Lightning Collection figures back to back. Magna Defender is the reason for Strident. Strident was a parody of the Magna Defender. So finally having this figure, my favorite of all the Super Sentai characters, hands down, no contest. It's pretty awesome. There are little bits of issues with his range of motion, but it doesn't stop you from playing with the guy. And I've been playing with him ever since, and it's such a well done representation of the character that he had to be on my list. I mean, come on, it wouldn't even make any sense for me not to have him on here. So anyway, yeah, that's Magna Defender. Number 6, Mando and Cara Dune from Star Wars Black Series from Mandalorian. Mando is dope. They did all kinds of good stuff with him. He looks the part just like the first couple episodes of the show. But my girl Gina Carano as Cara Dune. Man, I've been waiting to have some kind of representation of Gina Carano in my collection, and this one does not disappoint. I mean, look at her. From every angle, it's legit. They got the thickness down, you know, her little smirk. I really couldn't have asked. I mean, she's just, they just did it. They did her so much justice, it's ridiculous. So I'm super happy to have her. Number 5, my Mezco Batman collection. So far, every Batman I've gotten from Mezco has been an experience. I even managed to make a pretty awesome Bruce Wayne custom with the alternate head, which, you know, you never get that with Batman figures. But both the Ascending Knight and the Sovereign Knight are dope figures. I've got the Supreme Knight on the way. I couldn't not have a list without some Batman representation, because unfortunately, even though he is the powerhouse juggernaut of a character that he is these days, he was my favorite superhero growing up. So I do have a lot of representations of him. The Sovereign Knight Batman, though, despite the little things that were weird about this figure, with like the way he looked in the promotional pictures versus what we got, I still love this figure. It's fun. It's very fun. It's very simple. It kind of, to me, does the things that the BVS one should have done. It like improves on everything that was in the BVS version. So, you know, gotta give it props. I mean, everything, every little detail is just so well thought out. It's almost like they took BVS and crossed it with Arkham City, and I love it. And then his cape drapes the way that I like my capes to drape. And I know a lot of people have been replacing the capes with, you know, wires, but this guy is just win. They're all win, but this guy is just pure win. Number 4. It's a tie between the MEZCO Blade, which is one of my favorite figures of all time, and the JOYTOY Hardcore Coldplay Red and Blue, because their names are kind of stupid. The Marine, and then, you know, Blue Falcon, which is a guy who shoots his own team. Like, they didn't do their research, so I'm calling him Red and Blue. But Blade, it's Blade. I mean, he's missing the vest, and that's what kind of doesn't make him perfect, but it's Blade in the MEZCO package, so it's an experience, and I really like it. I mean, there were things that were lacking, but overall, it was fun. You see, I've modded his hands with some SH FIGUARTS stuff, and it made him extra dope. The Hardcore Coldplay line, it's G.I. Joe on steroids. You know what I mean? It's plain and simple. Literally almost everything JOYTOY is doing right now has become G.I. Joe Pursuit of Cobra on steroids, and it's why I like it. And it's set, everything's set in the near future, which, you know, that's my jam. That's where I want my Fenris company when I divorce them essentially from the G.I. Joe world. That's where we fit in. But I mean, all the styling, you've got the modern weaponry with the near future edge to it. It's just, it's dope. It's dope. And I've been loving it. It's got me back into 1/18 scale collecting. Now here are the honorable mentions. I've got a few of them. So we're going to start with the JOYTOY Fox Hunter and the Special Forces. The Special Forces represent, well, these 3 figures represent what solidified me jumping back into 1/18 scale action figures, mainly the JOYTOY universe. The JOYTOY universe has the aesthetic that I want for the Fenrisverse, and Dem Guts sent me the Special Forces, and playing with them I was like, fuck, I gotta get more of these guys, you know. Then Action Figure Addict 112 sent me Fox Hunter, and then it was like, okay, it's a wrap. At first I was only gonna go back to JOYTOY for mechs and stuff, and then this made me see that I'm gonna go to JOYTOY for whatever they release, just about. They're not perfect, and there are aspects of them that you can find on other figures, mainly even in the Hardcore Coldplay. One of them is identical to them in most of his gear, he's just different colors. And he's got a couple different decos, and that's why these guys are in the honorable mention section, and those guys have a place on the list, you know, a number on the list. But yeah, these guys are pretty significant, so they're here in the honorable mentions. Next up, we have the Marvel Legends Hercules by Hasbro. I think this is from the Thanos wave, the Endgame Thanos wave. This figure surprised the shit out of me because I kept seeing him and I'd seen no reviews. I saw a handful of pictures. Actually, my homeboy Bodie, he put up some pictures on Instagram, and they were dope pictures. Seeing him in action, it was fun to see Hercules doing stuff, and it looked good. You know what I mean? The figure just looked good. But he's so much fun and he's so well thought out, it's ridiculous. I mean, it's kind of why I'm going to take so much time out of this to talk about it. But everything from just the smirk, he kind of reminds me of Brave and the Bold Aquaman. He's got that old school swashbuckling kind of swagger to him. He almost looks like the old school Hercules movie from back in the, I think it was the 60s. The weird things, of course, you know, like his musculature is perfect. Then they got the hairy chest, you know, once again, a throwback to the Hercules in the old movie. But then they forgot to put the hair on his arms, you know, like they always do with Wolverine, which is strange. But, you know, you got the muscles. The muscles look amazing. They made them look right. They're anatomically correct. And they just look like what you would think of when you think of Hercules. Another big thing with him is he came with 2 different types of weapons, a flail and a broadsword. The cool thing is he has weapon storage. I was like, wow, how come like more lines don't do this? So what's cool about this is that you have a character who, you know, this is the superhero version of Hercules, but he can easily fit in just based on his clothing, based on the weaponry. He can fit in your He-Man line, your Mythic Legions line, your Lord of the Rings line. It doesn't matter as long as they're using swords and there's sorcery and there's horses and knights and barbarians and goblins and shit. You can throw him in there, you know, and he just looks right. And then his hands. So he comes with two sets of hands, closed fists and open hands, but the open hands are still closed enough that they look like fists. So when I pose him, he looks ready. And I don't know, man, like that's just like the basics that I ask for from a dope ass figure. It really is. Like I don't really have too many wants or needs in a figure to be really dope. But you know, I didn't want to fill up this list with like, you know, random Marvel Legends that I had fun with. This one stood out though because there's something special about a figure that they took this much care to get him right, especially as bad as the previous one was. Number 3, we're in our top 3 now. Transformers War for Cybertron Siege Jetfire. Now this figure is amazing. This almost was my number 1. It took me a couple like reshufflings to realize what I needed to put as number 1. But the Siege line, last year I got so much Transformer shit because there's so much that I had been wanting to get, and this year I'm not stopping. I mean, there's certain things. I mean, but they got everything right. His robot mode is awesome. His alt mode is awesome. It's like it's as good, if not better, than what we saw back in the day in the cartoon. Better than some of the previous figures. I mean, it's just dreamlike. They got it so right, and it's not hard to play with. But what really sets him off are these effect parts. They help to make him look more dynamic, especially if you like taking pictures of him, you know, even just like playing with him, you know. But you know, another thing that helps is once you see him with the rest of your squad, like, you know, give him a squad. Like I put him with my headmasters. I was like, wow, this figure is awesome. So I could pretend like those guys are the team that is, you know, flying him when he's in, you know, his vehicle mode, his alt mode, and they're exploring deep space or liberating places in deep space. But they fit well with him. I have Highbrow, who turns into this weird dual-bladed helicopter type deal. But he's fun, and the fact that he dual wields his pistols, I love it. Then you have Chrome Dome, who I guess he's become a little bit more popular later on, you know, the IDW runs, but I just like his look and I love his alt mode. And then I just like the basic posability of these headmasters, or what are they called? Titans Masters or something like that. And then there's Hardhead. This one was one of my favorites. I'd wanted this guy since the first time I saw him. He turns into this weird tank, Snyder Batmobile-ish type thing, you know? So I was like, I gotta get him. But yeah, when you have them all together, you know, and you have Jetfire with them, it really works. This is one time Hasbro really beat the third-party circuit. Alright, we are at number 2. And this one was almost number 1. This is the JOYTOY God of War 86 set. Essentially, it's BT from Titanfall 2, which is my favorite shooter of all time. One of the best experiences I've ever had with a video game, and I had to have a representation that was going to, of course, make its way into my collection. Now, the small figure, I think she's 1/24th or 1/25th scale, good lord. She's cool. But the main attraction is straight up BT. She's dope though. She's such a huge improvement. And this is her without her armor. You glue the armor on, and I didn't really want to do that yet. I will eventually do it for the review. But yeah, compared to the previous offerings, these are the UNX Core or UNSX. You know what I'm talking about. I reviewed them years ago. Some of the older JOYTOY figures just look too mechanical. You know what I mean? And they're not supposed to be cyborgs, you know? So seeing her next to them, I mean, she's like better than Joe articulation. She's pretty tough. And all that balancing you see her doing, I'm not using putty, I'm not using anything. She's just standing on one foot. That's engineering. That's what I mean when I'm telling you constantly that these companies need to engineer the hell out of their fucking figures. That's what we got. And that's not even the main event. It's this bad boy who is gonna be part of the Fenders first. You already know. You already know. So that's why I picked this up. BT fits perfectly, or Perseus as he will come to be known. And I love it. I love it. It was almost number one. And the number one most fun figure of 2019 for me was the NECA TMNT movie figures. I can't explain how much fun these guys are. Just seeing them. That's before you even play with them, but seeing them. I told you guys that if that was the last thing I ever collected, if NECA made them and then I was told I had to stop, and I had to stop, I couldn't go back into it, I'd be happy because it's something I've been waiting for a long time. But I don't have to stop. And we're getting Shredder and Splinter and Foot Soldiers. I mean, and then down the line we have to get Casey in probably April. So I'm blown away. I mean, the attention to detail, you know NECA. They always do a crazy job with that kind of stuff. The attention to detail was on a different level. The articulation is serviceable. It's one of the few times where I feel like a release was 100% made for me, because it's one of those things that these are one of those things I had been asking for a long time. I actually feel like something I said, some video I made might have caught their eye, or a lot of us, because there are a lot of Turtle fans still out there, like 90s Turtles fans. None of this bootleg shit that's been coming in the years later. I'm talking about like the original, the faithful to the comic, you know, at least in the feel, the overall feel. These guys, this was an event for me. I went through a whole bunch to try and find them, pre-order them, tried to buy them off the site, but I couldn't because, you know, people were bum rushing the site to get them and they were sold out in a couple minutes. I mean, it was ridiculous. And then GameStop had them, and you can still probably find them at GameStop today. So, thank you NECA for actually making that dream a reality. And thank you guys for watching this whole video. I figured since it had been a while, I would give you guys a long one and go into some detail and, you know, just make it feel more of a sit down and relax and let me regale you with some information about, you know, figures that I love. So yeah, that's it for 2019, and let's jump into 2020. God, it's gonna be so weird saying that. 2020, the year 2020. But let's jump into 2020 with some dope figures and hopefully some dope fun conversation. And yeah, that's it for me. And as always, this is my story and I'm sticking to it. And yeah, you guys have been great. Peace outside.